Tim Hauraney, all recovered from the Canadian Grand Prix, the best race of the year. No, not quite.
I'm getting there, Adam. I'm getting there.
Well, Tim, there was a lot to talk about, and there was a lot of stuff we didn't really get to on the last show. Obviously, Jacques Villeneuve has continued his trolling. And then of course there's some information on Daniel Ricciardo that has come up because I think because Jacques put the spotlight on him, and Christian Horner's commented and Helmut Marko's commented, and we got a lot of stuff to do there. We got to talk about technical regs, and we want to talk about a driver of note at Alpine. So should we start with Ricciardo and just get that out of the way? So obviously Christian Horner was asked about that seat, and he said, well, it's up to Daniel, if he wants to keep it, and if he wants to keep it, he's going to have to perform. And then Helmut Marko said, it is a junior team. We do need to look at our future, but it's looking more and more still like Liam Lawson will not be in next year, barring some crazy turn of events here in the second leg. What do you think is going on with Daniel, and what do you know?
Well, I think one of the big things for Daniel at the moment, Adam, is consistency. Like hasn't been able to, string together good weekends. He had the great weekend in Canada, and that was him being excellent through the entire weekend. But when it comes to, earlier in the season, a lot of up and down, a lot of just inconsistencies, a lot of could have, should have, almost getting into Q3, almost out-qualifying Yuki. And on top of all of that, he's operating against Tsunoda, who is at the top of his game at the moment, and he's only going to get better. And then at the same time, you have to wonder, how much was he actually thinking about that Red Bull seat at the beginning of the year? I remember talking to him about that in Bahrain before the season even got started. And, he was pretty forthright with saying that he wasn't thinking about it whatsoever, and it wasn't on his mind. And I don't tend to necessarily believe that, because I think it's always on a driver's mind when they're...
It has to be.
100%. Whether or not he's thinking about it all the time, that would, be the argument, the discussion of whether or not it's something he thinks about constantly. But it is something that he would have to have thought about at the beginning of the season and all the way up until probably Sergio got his deal signed off on. Now, there is some, I think, inconsistencies when it comes to that Red Bull program lately, Adam, and in particular, bringing Sergio Perez back on board until at least 2026. That raises some question marks of being very, I don't want to say conservative with the driver market, but could you have taken Carlos Sainz and plugged him in beside Max Verstappen, and would have Max really wanted that? That's a question. But then again, I'm sure Carlos would have wanted to come back and race at that team for at least one season to try and have a shot at competing at the front. Because let's be honest, when we get to next year, Red Bull may not be the favorite heading into next year, and it'll still be a competitive car. I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of different winners. Red Bull will probably still win races as well, but if you're Carlos Sainz, you still have a chance at winning, right? At that point, you're not going to Mercedes because you're not getting what you want there, and then you're having to travel backwards down the grid, so you know that you're not going to be able to grab race victories outside of that. So for not putting Carlos Sainz in there with Max Verstappen, I think that's a bit of a mistake on Red Bull's part. But again, bringing back Sergio Perez, who had a pretty shocking Canadian Grand Prix, to say the least, to be nice about it, to be honest with you. And having these dips in performances, right? So then it's like, okay, well, why not just promote Yuki Tsunoda, right? Why not just grab Yuki and bring him up for next year?
And is the Honda thing standing in the way of that?
Clearly, he deserves it, but then again, So that would be my thing with the Honda deal.
Yeah, because
as we know, when manufacturers sometimes move teams, doesn't happen that often, obviously. But sometimes they will bleed out the money and bleed it into somewhere else. So if for Honda, I mean, taking a lot of that marketing, a lot of those marketing dollars and starting to strip it away from the Red Bull program and then start to slowly introduce it into Aston Martin. I mean, you could see what Ford has done with Red Bull. I mean, they are slowly, bleeding in Red Bull powertrains and Ford on trucks, in social media posts. I mean, even look at Audi. I mean, Audi's doing activations at racetracks now because at Formula One Grand Prix, because they are obviously ushering in to Formula One. So they are slowly integrating themselves into F1. And so when it comes to Honda, obviously they play a big role of Yuki Tsunoda being at the team, whether or not they're paying for some of that seat. I don't know the whole details on all of that, but for sure, like that's one of the reasons why he's there. I mean, obviously he's good, really good, I should say. And that's one of the reasons why he is there as well. But when you focus in on Daniel Ricciardo and you have Liam Lawson just in the background waiting to take that seat, if you're Red Bull, you're going to lose him. And who knows where he could go. But if you're a team that's based off of promoting your talent, you're not necessarily promoting your talent, if Daniel Ricciardo's left in that seat for next year. Now, granted, there is still a chunk of time left here that I think Ricciardo can prove himself that he is deserving of that seat. Now, whether or not he can get that together, I think that's where everything lies at the moment. I think he has to be consistent with those performances, Adam, like we saw in Canada. And he's got to string those together because it hasn't been a great start to the season. He's slowly sort of progressed. I mean, remember he had the chassis change and, was that going to help turn things around? I mean, it helped turn a couple things around, but it wasn't the consistency that I think a lot of us were looking for. Now, when Daniel gets it together, Adam, I mean, he's really good, right? Like we
saw it this weekend. We saw it.
Yeah. Like he's incredible, right? Like he's an incredible driver when he's able to just string the whole weekend together and perform throughout the entire Friday to Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I think, Adam, like that has to be happening more often. And I think the next at least 4 to 6 weeks are going to be very important for him.
Well, he's off to a good start, and I'll give you a stat, Tim, that to me says that the biggest problem at Red Bull right now is not Daniel Ricciardo. He is the most, everybody. It's funny because like everybody forgets his 2 years at Renault, and I think it's because of the pandemic. He was really good, especially that second year at Renault. That's why he got the big deal from McLaren. Now, the 2 years at McLaren were bad. Last year was a mixed bag because he had just come back and then he broke his hand, and it's whatever. This year is the first year, I think, in the last 4 that we've got the opportunity to see Daniel in a car and getting comfortable with it as the season progresses. And as he's progressed, it's gotten better. I look at this stat: the last 3 races, total points from every driver in the Red Bull program not named Max Verstappen: 5 Yuki Tsunoda, 4 Daniel Ricciardo, 4 Sergio Perez. To me, Checo is the big issue right now. If we're talking about problems, I think that's a problem they got to fix. And I mean, I think it was Lando Norris that made an offhand comment this weekend. Nothing crazy, but he said, like, it looks like it's us and Ferrari as the Constructors' Championship. And when you have a team that's that good, I wonder if Yuki Tsunoda's 2-year extension includes, and Sergio Perez's as well, includes the ability to swap. Because, I mean, I could see Yuki Tsunoda being a pretty good addition to that team, like the way he's raced. Yeah,
I see what you're saying. So you're basically baked into Sergio's contract somewhere as like a performance standard. Yes. And actually, you know what? Drivers actually do have that baked into some of their contracts. I know some in particular had to stay within certain lap time and certain deficit to teammates or
No
else
way.
that was like the end of it. Oh yeah, man. Like some contracts are ruthless that way, where it's you would have to maintain an average of 2/10 between your teammates in order for us to consider picking up an option on you for the next year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like there are things like that that do get hammered into a contract. It would be interesting to see if they did do something like that with Sergio's deal, right? Where it's like, if you're not performing to this level, this standard, then we have the right to remove you or put you in the junior team or just cancel the contract altogether. It's interesting when you're talking about, what Norris had said, but if you look at like the last 3 races, I mean, the last 3 races, if we were to start the season at the last 3 races, McLaren would be on top with 88 points. Ferrari would be second with 65 points. Red Bull would be third with 62 points. And Mercedes would be fourth in the constructors with 60 points. That stat coming from motorsport.com. I found that actually extremely fascinating when you take a look at, Sergio's level of performance, right?
Totally.
It just hasn't been there. And if it has been there, it probably, that total would have been a little bit higher, closer to where McLaren is. But then again, we go back and we revisit, Daniel Ricciardo, and it's tough, Adam, when like he is a fan favorite, and he is very good with the media. He's very good with everyone he works with. And I think on that side of it, it's tough to lose that. But at the same time, if he's not getting it done, then he has to go. That's just is the way it is. It's Formula One, right? But
well, let's see how the next few races play out. This is a good weekend in Montreal. Right?
Exactly, right? Like, it's about stringing that together. If he can show up and show that he can keep coming back to that performance level that he showed in Canada, then I don't see why not. He's not back there. I would keep him around as well. I mean, when he's on and he's really strung things together, he's an incredible driver. He's
one of the best in the world.
Extremely fast. So
Yep. Now, one name that keeps popping up in once the agreement between Alpine and Esteban Ocon had been sort of formally announced, which was on the heels of the big crash with Gasly in Monaco. The question now is who is going to get that Alpine seat and who wants it, right? Because it's been a bit of a program that's in flux. There were rumors that Gasly has been looking at other options. I'm not sure which other options he may have, probably dependent on Carlos Sainz and then Valtteri Bottas and a few other drivers. But Jack Doohan's name has come up. He did free practice 1 in Montreal, I believe. It was free practice 1. What do you know there?
It's like we had discussed on here, Adam, a few weeks ago about who we could see at that Alpine seat. And I had said that Jack Doohan is probably going to be one of those drivers who would probably be in that seat for next year. I find that very interesting from the standpoint that he has been biding his time on the sidelines, reserve driver, simulation, for a while now. And like, I find that extremely interesting because he's a young driver, quite competitive in Formula 2. I think the 1 year that he probably would have been in contention for the championship, the chassis was cracked on his car, and that's kind of like really set him back. But that being said, I like the fact that Alpine is considering giving him a chance, because we sit here, Adam, and we talk about young drivers. When are we getting more young drivers? We want to see the rookies coming in, and we may get a chance here, Adam. Like and I like it, actually. I like that move, and I'm curious to see if he gets the seat, how he does. When you do sidelines for so long, you get so hungry, but you also lose the feel of racing.
Yes.
And that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. So, what else are you supposed to do to bide your time? I like the fact that they have him working a lot with the simulator. So if you take a look at Oscar Piastri when he had to sit on the sidelines, right? That was a F2 champion coming off of winning that, and then your Alpine's basically putting him on the sidelines, putting him in the simulator, having him do testing and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that they're doing the same sort of thing with Jack, because not only is he going to be extremely hungry, but at the same time, he's getting so much work with the team. He's getting so much work with engineers. He's understanding how the communication and the level of communication that he needs to bring to the team, so he can be ready to go right away. So if you're going to plug him into a seat in 2025, I actually think he may turn out to be a really, really good driver, especially in a rookie season, something similar to a Piastri, only because he's getting all of that experience off track, all of the experience simulator, all of the experience with dealing with engineers, all of the experience of dealing with tires and working on setup. Because he'll be, for the European leg they have coming up here, Adam, they're going to put him on simulator duty, and essentially it's going to be the same as like what Liam Lawson had to undergo, right? Like they're having problems with the car. Jack's getting in the simulator. He's going to be in there for 6 hours working away on it. But you're in there learning and communicating and trying to make a race car better. So when you get to the track and it's like go time, you know how to operate, you know how to communicate to the engineers, and you get a better understanding for what a car needs. And when I take a look at, like, if I bring Logan Sargent into the conversation as a young driver who, if you just leave him on the sidelines doing something similar, probably has a better start to their career.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about Logan. I actually think Logan is actually a very talented driver. He's just in a very difficult situation at the moment. But for Jack, I like that idea. I would love to see him on the grid. And yeah, I hope he gets that opportunity. Now, who's going to be the teammate, Adam? Is it going to be Gasly, or is it going to be
do you want
Valtteri Bottas?
Well, Valtteri, I mean, if Carlos doesn't go Audi's way, Valtteri all of a sudden becomes a pretty wanted commodity, right? Because you imagine that he'd probably want that Sauber, for the last year that they're going to be called Sauber, are going to want to keep him. But also Williams has stepped up and said this would be a good program if Carlos doesn't sign there. I mean, I'm curious about that. And then for Alpine, I think Valtteri is probably, I mean, would it be a step? I guess it would be a step up from the way Sauber's been, and the potential would be higher, but it's still a problematic team for him. And I kind of feel bad because this is a guy who was fantastic when he was with Mercedes. So anyway,
But I mean, you're basically you would take Valtteri and you'd pair him with a rookie.
Okay.
In the hopes of getting him up to speed, helping him along, something similar to what he and Zhou Guanyu went through, right?
Yeah,
the two of them working together because Zhou was a rookie and Valtteri was there to kind of help him, bring him along. And so something similar down at Alpine. It's whether or not that's something Valtteri wants to do, right? Do you think that team is going to be competitive next year? I mean, they may be okay. It all depends on upgrades, and it all depends on if they can get the weight down in the car this year. But then if you dive deeper into the driver market, so much of this is based around what Carlos Sainz does and where he ends up going. And then that, I think influences what Valtteri does, right? If I'm Williams and I don't get Carlos Sainz, I'm going after Valtteri. I am. That's the next stop. I would definitely do that if I'm James Vowles. I mean, what would you do? Think about it. Think about those moving chairs.
And Alpine, I think it makes sense to put Doohan in there, and I think it makes sense to keep Gasly. You got a French driver. He's a good guy. I feel like Gasly's light has gone out a little bit since him and Yuki were paired up in terms of he's always a charming guy, but I think him and Esteban, I think there's been a lot of tension behind the scenes there. Like, I don't think this has been happy, and I don't think it's gone the way that even Otmar would have probably hoped it was going to go when he signed them up. I think it was him. He signed them up, right?
Yeah, Otmar is the one who put
them together.
Gasly to the team, right? He's one of the ones who brought him in. So
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like, okay, you got a really good guy. Pierre's a good guy and he's very talented. That's not the worst thing for a rookie to have next to him, right? And Pierre's used to that. He dealt with it with Yuki, right? So I like that. And I like the fact that there's potentially at Haas, you could see, Ollie Behrman going in too. So we could have 2 rookies to start on the grid next year, which is awesome. And I think the Ollie Behrman thing is close to done. It's not done, but it's been reported a million times that it is.
I mean, you also could have Kimi Antonelli as well. You could have 3... Yeah, you could have 3 rookies on the grid, Adam. Like you could have Kimi Antonelli up at Mercedes, Ollie Behrman down at Haas, and Jack Doohan down at Alpine.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be pretty sweet, wouldn't it?
For sure. And those are like really good rookies to have. I mean, you have Ollie, who's put in a ton of time behind the scenes as well, working with both Haas and Ferrari, learning all he can from there. And then you've got Jack Doohan, who's been behind the scenes doing stuff now for the past few seasons. As for Kimi Antonelli, that's a whole other sort of story, whether or not that's the right move. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, Toto Wolff, everything Adam really does point to Antonelli at that team next season. But yeah, I mean, getting more rookies on the grid is definitely a good thing. So absolutely.
And I guess my next question would be on that regard, and I want to bring it back to Red Bull for just a second. I want to know what your thoughts on this are. Helmut Marko said in the German newspapers that he thinks that he and Christian Horner have come to an accord or a ceasefire, I think is how he put it, in order to win a championship. What's your sense of what's going on there? Because it was a very contentious start to the year.
Oh, big time. I mean, it's just a massive power struggle to start the season, right?
Yeah.
What's going on there now? I mean, it's anybody's guess. You can only speculate, what could be happening there. I wonder, or I would like to know if it was Helmut Marko, because he's usually the one who's supposed to be making the decisions on the driver's side. I'd be interested to know if he was the one who made the decision on the Sergio Perez driver's side, or if that was Christian Horner. Right. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Horner's already sort of bypassed Marko to get Daniel Ricciardo back at the team as well.
Yes. Yeah. And
so that's what Helmut Marko's supposed to be there for, right, Adam?
Tim, so it's still a mess. This year, this offseason, it might blow up again, right?
Oh, who knows? It's so tough to tell. I mean, and I think a lot of it has to do with what happens with Max, right? What ends up happening with Max? Does Max stay until the end of 2025 and then moves on somewhere else? Does he stay to finish out his contract, which I believe ends in 2028? And I think what does Red Bull Powertrain's program look like for 2026?
Right.
There are rumors that it's not the greatest right now. There's rumors that they've really, they're kind of struggling with the engine regs that are supposed to be coming out in a year's time here, year and a bit. So it's for Max, I think also he wants to win another championship. You got to start, looking abroad. I mean, I was sitting down, talking with Toto Wolff on last Friday, and, I was just saying to him in an interview, basically hey, look, you're really good with driver talent and spotting it.
Yep.
And I was trying to talk to him about Antonelli, and then he took it down the Max Verstappen route of I just missed out on Max Verstappen, right? He was, and this isn't the first time he said it. He has said it before in the press, but it just goes to show you he's still iterating it, meaning that he still wants to try and get him. I don't think he hasn't stopped trying to get Max Verstappen to Mercedes. You know what I mean? It still feels like he's still feels like he's trying to go after him, whether or not that's for next year or 2026. I mean, if if I'm Max, I'm definitely listening, because we've already seen what Mercedes can do with a new regulation change, especially in the engine department. We've seen that, right? 2014,
Yeah,
they made the best engine on the grid that was the best engine on the grid for years. And no one could catch them for so many years. And so if I'm Verstappen and I really, want to win more championships, I'm definitely fielding those calls. Like, I'm definitely taking the calls from him. Definitely.
Okay.
Wouldn't you, though? Like, think about that.
I mean, you have to. You have
right?
to if you're him. Yeah. It's amazing how quickly you can be forgotten about. You can be a world champion, and then all of a sudden, what did Sebastian Vettel had the most starts for Ferrari, I think, ever, and didn't get that championship, right? Came real close. Real close. But
twice.
Anyway, you mentioned the technical rules and regulations. You said you learned a lot more. We didn't get to this on Monday morning, but what did you learn about 2026? What are these cars going to have that we're perhaps not used to, or what are we looking for? How's this going to change the product?
I think that's the problem, Adam, is like, what are they going to have? Because right now it sounds like they don't have much. So,
great.
Essentially, what we saw when we talked about it on Thursday last week, basically what you and I saw was a draft of basically like a potential for what the cars could look like, what they could do. And then I get into a team principal press conference on the Friday, and all of a sudden every team principal is popping off about, these are just drafts. Like, this isn't set in stone, and we don't know yet, and the cars are going to be really slow. There's such a fear of these cars being as fast as a Formula 2 car, and that is something that was jumping up and down the paddock all weekend long. Like, it wasn't like a little sort of snippet here or there. Like, every single team principal was nervous about how fast these cars are going to be. Where are they generating all the downforce from? Because they're doing away with the floors we have now, and they're going back to a flat bottom floor. And it's like, okay, well, where's the downforce coming from, right? And so that's part of the issue. The engine regulation is also a part of the issue as well. And even though it's already been signed off on, it sounds like team principals want them to open it back up so they can take a closer look at this 50-50 split. That's the idea with the engine regulation. It's a 50-50 split. You have your internal combustion engine, 50% of the power. You have your battery doing the other 50% of the power. And when you start hearing things like, well, drivers are going to have to lift going down a straightaway to help regenerate the battery. That's like, what? that's not car racing. That's not motorsports. Like, you don't lift. That's the idea. Like, you have to do everything you can to put the pedal down, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other things they still have to look at here, Adam.
Is it possible they delay these? It's feeling like it's a little close, Tim.
I think some of the team principals saying that not to blow it too much out of proportion, because they're not even allowed to work on the car regulations until January 1st of 2025. Okay. So there's still time for the teams to talk about making adjustments. For the FIA, their big thing was getting the regulation out into the public so a team principal doesn't leak it and make it sound like these things are going in the wrong direction. So from one aspect, from my job, I appreciate the fact that the FIA thought about doing that. And that also painted a picture of this is where they're at. These regulations are a draft. There's still a lot of work that needs to go into them for the car portion. The FIA basically putting the stamp on the fact that this is the level where the car is. So teams can't go and be like, oh, we'll do this with this part of the car. but that will ruin the racing, right? They want to make it so this is our negotiation point. Here's where we're not going, and this is where we're not going, but we're going to operate within this because we don't want to ruin the racing. And I appreciate the fact that the FIA doing this, and also FOM and the team principals basically being forced to come together to communicate on what is the best direction for Formula One. And that's something that actually we've kind of missed out on for so long. I want to say never. Because like now if there's communication between team principals, FOM, and the FIA, and all of them are getting together to actually communicate on what is going to make for a good show, I'm all for that. Because
yes, I mean that is the
then
point.
You're taking because then you're taking the fan into account, which is crucial, right? You need to take the fans into account. To me, fans are the most important. That's for me always been that way. So it's something serious they need to take a look at. I can see that the World Motorsport Council has to sign off on these things before the end of the month. Whether or not we get that, I don't know. We'll see. But everyone's going to have to meet. There's going to have to be more discussions held because at the moment, the downforce from these cars going through a corner is just not there. They're not going to be that fast in a corner if we were to go racing with what we've got. And that was one of the things that James Vowles really stressed. He kept saying, like, we are the pinnacle of motorsports. We need to be the pinnacle of motorsports. Because, like, some people were saying that, like, for cornering speeds, like an F2 car could be just as fast. And it's like, is that the pinnacle of motorsport, right? So when you look at it, Adam, like from a fan's perspective, what do you think?
Well, to me, all I really want is people pushing themselves to the edge. The thing that we love about sports are the stakes, and the stakes have to be high. And if you're intentionally slowing down and diluting the product, at a certain point, people will go and they'll look for something else that's similar. And maybe for IndyCar, they're hoping that these regulations are terrible and that they get, a lot more people watching and they get to grow the sport and they've got, the American audience and that sort of thing. I think my point is that if the FIA doesn't realize soon that if you don't go to the extreme, somebody else will, once you put these into effect, it's very, very hard to change them in anything less than half a decade, as we've seen, right? So you need to make these cars fast. You need to make them a little dangerous. You've got to keep, fix all the issues in the cockpit if there can be a crash, but there has to be something about this that wows people, that when that car goes by, you get that feeling in your chest of I cannot believe that a human being is driving that. And that's the cornering and all the other things that make Formula One amazing when it's at its best. So exclude Monaco's race from this. You got to make sure you're doing that. And I don't know that that's been the priority. Oddly enough, it seems like they focus a little too much on what's going to be usable on the roads, like for like pedestrian cars. And it's like, well, at a certain point, you'll be able to take some stuff, but I really would like this to be like a holy crap sport where you're like, I can't believe that people can do this. That's what I want Formula One to be.
I think the sustainability factor that they're also putting into all this is really great. And it's something that I hope, we talk more about this time around than we did the last time we had an engine regulation change come around, because we didn't really focus on just how impressive these power units are that they're running out on the track right now. Like, we actually never really took a huge look into it and really marketed it and pushed that idea, that technology out there, showing people what these power units can do. I think for this time around, I am very interested in the biofuels, man. Like, that has got me extremely interested, man. If they can get that to work, each engine manufacturer working with a petrol company to develop biofuels, e-fuels, and if they can find a way to get that stuff where it's like a drop in and go, man, you could really change a lot of things that happen in like our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like massive change, dude. Huge change, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, there is a lot of really cool stuff with the new regs and the sustainability factor of the new regs. I like it. It's great. It's it's friggin' brilliant. I mean, you have a lot of smart people really working on this stuff. So it's fascinating to watch go by. But yeah, I mean, Andres Stella, we were sat in on a press media conference with him on Saturday, I think it was, and he made a good point where he was talking about like the engine regulation, where he thought that do we really need 50-50 split? Why can't you just increase fuel flow to the engine, which I agree with, by the way, and then restrict some of the battery, but then deploy the battery for your overtake mode. And so that's where you would ramp up to a 50-50 split. And to me, that actually makes a lot of sense, because if you're letting the internal combustion engine, do whatever, 80% of the work, 75% of the work, and then all of a sudden, if you want to get past somebody, you need the extra oomph, and you've saved up enough juice in the battery, then you pump it up to 50-50 and away you go. I mean, that would be interesting to me. I think, like, if I'm an engine manufacturer, like, that part of it's interesting. I mean, I know like Bruno Famine and Toto Wolff, they're not totally sold on that kind of stuff. They're not, I think from their standpoint, Adam, it's that they've already put, so much time and work in developing what they're working on, that it doesn't make sense to kind of like start veering in other directions. So I think for some of the engine manufacturers that are building these power units, there's going to have to be somewhere give and take, I think, with all of it.
Yep.
It's just going to be interesting to see how it sort of all plays out. But I like the fact that they are all communicating, Adam, and I like the fact that they're letting us know what's going on. And I appreciate the fact that they're wanting to put the sport first. And for me, that's important.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that communication is going to be key, Tim. It really, really is. As a fan, as a non-expert, the only thing I hope for is good racing. And I think that it will be very interesting come 2026 to see the grid flipped around again like it was the last time. It's going to be great. That part will be great.
Well, think about it. Think about it, Adam. Like, when was the last time like you saw, let's say before Liberty Media, the sport really come first?
Oh, it's been
over everyone else's interests.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, like they've actually really sat down and been cognizant of the fact that, hey, the sport's in a really great place. We need to put it first over what we want.
Yep.
Even though they do want stuff, right? And they're going to fight for it. Don't get me wrong. Like, these team principals and these teams are going to fight for stuff. But they do also have to have the sport's best interest at heart as well.
Absolutely. Tim, is there anything else that you would like to discuss while we are here, my friend? Because, this is I'd like to discuss what's your weekend look like compared to last weekend? Like, what are you doing? What are you up to on an
this
off week?
Weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I haven't really decided. My girlfriend's got some, like, a improv performance down at Second City. I'm probably going to go support her and watch that.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. I swim with a competitive masters group 3 times a week. And Saturday early morning, we have our workout. So I'll do that early Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, I'll go down and see Jazz's stuff, come back, make her dinner, because I wasn't here last week. So, you got to make up for last time, right, buddy?
Yeah, of course.
And,
of course.
You got to be a good boyfriend here.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah. Then Sunday, I'm probably going to go for a long bike ride. Might go up to Angus Glen there, get my bike out, and just go north and go up to Stouffville, see what happens.
Wow. Tim, an active weekend, my friend.
Well, man, this is a long story. People don't give a shit about this, do they? But
What is it?
like during the pandemic, I had a really bad injury. I couldn't really exercise or work out, things that I like to do. And it took me 12 months to get over the injury before I could start working out again. And that was last year. And I put on a crap ton of weight, and I got to get it off because it's annoying me. And it's taken so damn long, but I enjoy doing all these exercises. So I'm just hoping that by doing all these workouts and all the things I like to do, running, swimming, biking, hopefully it'll work itself out.
It
We'll
will.
see. What are you doing this weekend, Adam?
Me?
That's
Oh,
what I
God.
want to know.
Well, it's Father's Day, Tim. So I'm doing whatever my daughter wants. So probably going to the splash pad on Saturday, as one does. And then she's going to have a sleepover with her grandparents on Saturday night. So Natalie and I are we've been planning on doing this date where we go to the beach. There's where we live near the beach here in Toronto, and there's a place that makes chicken fingers, and Natalie's favorite things are chicken fingers. So we're gonna get some chicken fingers. We'll get some ice cream. We'll go for a walk, and then we'll watch the Panthers and Oilers. And then Sunday we have Everly's swimming lessons, and then we have a Father's Day barbecue where I always end up having to be in the pool with the kids. So it's like it's like me and like 40 kids, and they're all screaming, and they're getting older, right? So they're sort of getting to the point. They're not at the point where they can swim by themselves, but you're like, it's all the dads jumping in, and I'm like, and all the moms and everybody else are out of the pool drinking wine. And I'm like, this is supposed to be Father's Day, right? This is supposed to be okay. No, I'm just checking. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing. Lots of kid stuff. That sounds
like it's good, man. It sounds like a blast, right?
It is fun. It is
whatsoever.
Fun. I'll tell you, man. Once they hit 4 years old, and I know that's a very long time, but once they hit 4 years old, the ease it's great. Like this morning, I taught my daughter how to open up a blind. Like, she's like, "Oh, that's how you do it?" Because I caught her on her windowsill trying to look out. And I was like, "Why don't you just open the blind?" She's like, "I don't know how to do that." So you can teach them stuff, and you can chat with them, and so it's cool. It's very cool this age. It's just
Adam, you're like, "Let me show you how to do that." So next time, you know how to do it yourself.
I don't have to do that.
I don't have to do it again.
Exactly that, Tim. Exactly
love
that.
Love it. I love that, man.
So listen, buddy, have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Happy Father's Day, Adam.
Woo!